There are no atheists in foxholes. The claim that there are no atheists in foxholes has been around for a long time now, but it's become especially repopularized since the war on terrorism began after the attacks perpetrated in the United States on September 11, 2001. This myth tries to claim that during times of great crisis, in particular those which threaten a person's life, that it's no longer possible to hold out and maintain disbelief in a higher saving power, or that during such experiences, that the natural and automatic reaction of a human being is to start believing in God and hope for some form of salvation. As the late former president of the Mormon Church, Gordon B. Hinckley, told a gathering of Mormons in 1996, "As you once knew so well, there are no atheists in foxholes. In times of extremity, we plead for and put our trust in a power mightier than ourselves." Well, for a theist, it may be natural to assume that such thing is true. After all, theistic religions teach that God is always there whenever circumstances are troubling or threatening. In Western monotheistic faiths, believers are taught that God is ultimately in control of the universe and will eventually make sure that everything turns out well. Because of this, it may be understandable for the adherent of such a tradition to assume that difficult circumstances will lead to theism for everyone. But is it true? Well, there must surely have been any number of atheists who, when faced with a deep personal crisis or life-threatening situation, whether in a foxhole or not, have called out to a god or gods for safety, help, or salvation. Atheists are human, of course, and have to deal with the same fears which all other humans must face. This is not, however, the case with every atheist in such situations. Here's a quote from World War I U.S. Army veteran Philip K. Paulson. "I suffered through horrifying moments, expecting to be killed. I was convinced that no cosmic rescuer would save me. Besides, I believed life after death was merely wishful thinking. There were times when I expected to suffer a painful, agonizing death. My frustration and anger at being caught in a dilemma of life and death situations simply infuriated me. Hearing the sound of bullets whistling through the air and popping near my ears was damn scary. Fortunately, I was never physically wounded." So, clearly it's false that any and every atheist will cry out to God or start believing in God during times of crisis. Even if the claim were true, however, there would be serious problems with it, serious enough that even theists should find it troubling. Does such an experience generate authentic faith? Would God even want people to believe merely because they were under great pressure and very afraid? Can such a faith lead to a life of devotion and love, which is supposed to be the foundation of religions like Christianity? This problem is made clear in what might be the earliest expression of this myth, although it doesn't use the same words. In 1936, Adolf Hitler told Cardinal Michael von Faulhuber of Bavaria, "Man cannot exist without belief in God. The soldier who for 3 and 4 days lies under intense bombardment needs a religious prop." Well, a faith and a belief in God which exists merely as a reaction to fear and dangers in situations like war isn't a genuine religious faith. It's just a religious prop. Some atheists have likened religious faith to a crutch, and if that analogy is ever true, it's probably most true here, although theists shouldn't try to promote their religion as a crutch. In further argument to all of this, we now also have to consider the other idea that there are atheists in foxholes. This second problem lies in the fact that extreme battlefield experiences and the dangers of foxholes can undermine a person's faith in a good, loving God. Quite a few soldiers have entered battles as devout believers, but ended up coming away without any faith at all. Consider the following story. The story of Paul Watkins is told in the book A Tremor of Bliss, Contemporary Writers on the Saints. "My great-grandfather returned from the Somme in the winter of 1916. He was an officer in the Welsh Guards Regiment. He had been gassed and shot, and had seen his platoon numerically wiped out and replaced more than 3 times since he first took command of it. He had used his sidearm, a Webley revolver, so much that its barrel was pitted into uselessness. I heard a story about one of his advances across no man's land in which he set out with a full company, and by the time he arrived at the German wire, he was one of only 2 men left alive. Until that time, this branch of my family had been Calvinistic Methodists. But when he returned from the war, my great-grandfather had seen enough to change his mind. He gathered the family together and banned religion from his house. Either God is a bastard, he said, or God isn't there at all. So, if it isn't true that there are no atheists in Foxholes, and that many theists leave Foxholes as atheists, why does this myth persist? It certainly can't be employed as an argument against atheism. Even if it were true, that would not mean that atheism is unreasonable, or that theism is valid. To suggest otherwise would be little more than argumentative fallacy. Is the claim that there are no atheists in Foxholes meant to imply that atheists aren't really non-believers and actually harbor a secret belief in God? Perhaps, but it's a false implication and can't be taken seriously. Is it meant to imply that atheism is inherently weak while theism represents strength? Once again, that may be the case, but that too would be a false implication. Regardless of the actual reasons for any particular theist to claim that there are no atheists in Foxholes, it simply isn't true, and it's an argument that should be rejected by anyone before the discussion goes any further.